When Ruth Carter pushed open her kitchen door that gray Cleveland morning, she expected the silence of a house still asleep. Instead, she froze. There, gleaming beside her old white Whirlpool, stood a second refrigerator, chrome, brand new, humming like an uninvited guest. Yellow sticky notes screamed, "Maddie," from every shelf, every carton, every jar. Her pulse skipped. After 26 straight hours in the trauma ward, after holding strangers' hands as they slipped away, this was how she was welcomed home. Her scrubs still smelled faintly of disinfectant. Her sneakers, once white, were the color of sorrow. She set her hospital bag on the counter and stared at the metallic intruder. It reflected her face, lined, exhausted, uncertain if she was seeing right. Footsteps. Maddie appeared, fresh curls, silk robe, holding a Sharpie like a wand. "Oh, you saw it," she chirped. "That one's mine. From now on, buy your own food, Ruth." The name struck sharper than the tone. Ruth. Not Mrs. Carter, not Mom. Just Ruth, as if she were some inconvenient roommate late on rent. "What did you say?" Ruth asked quietly, voice sandpapered by fatigue. "You heard me." Maddie leaned against the doorway, the corner of her mouth lifting. "It's just easier. I like things organized." She peeled another yellow note and pressed it onto a butter tub. Maddie. Ruth's eyes darted around the kitchen. Cheese. Maddie. Yogurt. Maddie. Chicken. Tomatoes. Even the salt. The Sharpie letters felt like a branding iron. "Maddie," she whispered, "this is my house. I paid for this food." "Exactly," Maddie said brightly. "So you can pay for yours, and I'll pay for mine. Simple boundaries." Ruth opened her old fridge as if to defend it. The shelves looked robbed, half empty, rearranged. The air felt colder than usual. Then Ethan entered, coffee mug in hand, hair messy, face closed. Her son, her only child. "Ethan," she began carefully, "can you please tell me what's happening here?" He sighed, not meeting her eyes. "Mom, it's just organization. We thought it'd avoid confusion. Everyone buys their own stuff." "Everyone?" Her voice trembled. "You two don't pay a cent of rent, or for the utilities, or—" "Mom, don't make a scene." His words sliced clean. "It's our home, too." Her chest ached. Our home. But it wasn't. It was hers. The house she'd bought 25 years ago, with double shifts, aching knees, and sheer will. That night she tried to sleep, but the smell of microwave popcorn, Maddie's popcorn, seeped under her door. She closed her eyes, remembering the boy who once drew her world's best mom cards after asthma attacks, promising he'd buy her a big house someday. Now he laughed downstairs with a woman who had labeled her butter. 3 days later, she returned from another shift and found labels on everything: soap, toothpaste, towels, even the toilet paper. She stared at her toothbrush, the only object untouched. A mercy or an insult, she couldn't tell. In the kitchen, Maddie smirked as Ruth lifted a pan covered with a sticky note. "If you're going to use it," Maddie said sweetly, "put your name on it too." The audacity knocked the breath out of her. "These are my pots." "Then claim them," Maddie said, turning away. Ruth looked at her hands, hands that had cleaned strangers' blood, held crying families, mended what others destroyed. Now they shook not from age, but disbelief. That night, Maddie cooked pot roast, Ruth's recipe. The scent filled every corner, cruel in its warmth. Ruth stayed in her room, hungry, humiliated. From the living room, laughter drifted. "When we sell her car," Maddie said between giggles, "we'll have enough for the Florida trip." Ruth's heart sank. "Sell my car?" In the morning, she tried once more. Ethan sat by the labeled coffee maker. "Son, we need to talk," she said. "You've crossed a line." He stared into his mug. "Maybe you should find your own place, Mom. We need our space." The world tilted. She walked upstairs. opened an old shoebox of photos. Ethan as a boy with his inhaler at graduation, in every memory that mattered. For the first time in years, love didn't rise. It cracked. And in the quiet that followed, Ruth Carter stopped being tired. She started planning. By the time Ruth Carter walked into the law office downtown, her hands no longer trembled. The plaque on the door read, Victor Alvarez, Attorney at Law. Inside, shelves groaned with thick legal codes and framed degrees. The room smelled faintly of coffee and something steady, certainty. Ruth clutched a folder so tightly her knuckles turned white. Inside were photos of yellow labels, copies of her grocery receipts, the notarized loan for $45,000, and the deed to her house. Victor listened quietly as she spoke. No interruptions, no disbelief. When she finished, he leaned back, folded his glasses, and said, "You have every legal right to remove them, Mrs. Carter. No lease, no rent, no contribution. This is your home." But his gaze softened. "He's your son. Are you sure this is the step you want to take?" Ruth hesitated only a second. Then she nodded. "He's my son, but he's also my tenant now, and I need him out." That night she came home to a tableau that made her skin crawl. Sitting on her floral sofa were Maddie's parents, Sebastian and Rachel Cole, two people who carried entitlement like perfume. Sebastian, heavy-set and loud, spread his knees like he owned the room. Rachel, sleek in pearls, smiled the way one does before delivering bad news. "Ruth," Sebastian boomed, "we thought it was time for a family talk. The kids have told us about the tension. We think everyone could use a little space." Ruth stayed standing. "Space?" Rachel tilted her head sympathetically. "There are wonderful retirement communities near here. Lovely gardens, your own kitchenette. You'd make friends your age." "My age?" Ruth repeated, tasting the insult. Maddie joined in smoothly. "We toured one last week, Mom. It's so peaceful. You'd love it." Ruth's throat tightened. "And how would I pay for this paradise?" Maddie shrugged. "Well, your hospital pension, of course. Maybe sell the car? It's old anyway." Ethan shifted in his seat but said nothing. The silence stabbed harder than any insult. Ruth forced a smile. "Let me think about it," she murmured. Then she went upstairs, closed her bedroom door, and whispered to the empty room, "They want me gone." Her phone buzzed. A message from Victor. "Appointment confirmed for tomorrow. Bring all evidence." She stared at the screen until her reflection blurred. So be it. 2 nights later, the final straw fell. After a brutal 14-hour shift, Ruth came home dreaming of tea and silence. The first thing she saw was a trash bag beside the refrigerator, leaking yogurt. Inside lay her food, cheese, ham, bread, all dumped like garbage. "What happened?" she gasped. "Oh," Maddie called from the living room. "Your stuff went bad, smelled awful, contaminating my fridge." "It wasn't spoiled." Maddie didn't flinch. "Well, I smelled it. And, I have a sensitive nose." Ethan appeared, beer in hand. "Mom, let's not do this. If Maddie says it was bad, it was bad." Ruth felt the last thread snap. "That's enough." Ethan rolled his eyes. "You always make drama out of everything. It's exhausting." "Drama?" Her voice shook, low and dangerous. "I worked 40 years for this house. And you—" "I didn't ask to be born," he shouted. Silence. Even Maddie looked startled. Ruth's world went cold. She turned, walked upstairs, and locked her door. Then she picked up her phone. Text to Victor. "Proceed with everything. I'm done." The next morning, she met him again. He slid a stack of documents across the desk. Eviction notice, Carter residence. Another page, loan default, $62,000 with interest. He looked up. "We can confront them directly. Shock and clarity often work better than a long court fight." "Let's do it," Ruth said, "and I want to be there." Saturday morning arrived clear and cold. Ruth brewed coffee and scrambled eggs, setting the table neatly. When the doorbell rang at 10 sharp, she opened it with a calm smile. Victor stood there in his gray suit beside a younger man carrying a briefcase. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter. Are they home?" "Yes," she said softly. "They're in the kitchen." Ethan appeared, frowning. "Who are you?" Victor's voice was crisp. "Victor Alvarez, attorney. We're here to serve legal notice." Maddie froze mid-sip of orange juice. He continued, "Effective immediately, both Ethan Carter and Madison Cole are to vacate the property within 72 hours. You are also being sued for defaulting on a signed loan and for emotional and property damages." The room went still. "You can't sue family," Maddie shrieked. Ruth met her eyes. "Family doesn't brand a mother like she's a carton of milk." Ethan's lips parted, but no words came. Victor placed the documents on the counter and nodded to Ruth. "It's done." She exhaled for the first time in weeks. "Good," she said quietly. Because in that moment, standing amid yellow labels and shattered illusions, Ruth Carter was no longer just a nurse or a mother. She was the rightful owner of her home, and she had finally drawn the line. For 2 days after the eviction notice, the house pulsed with uneasy quiet. Ruth Carter moved like a ghost between rooms, washing dishes, folding laundry, stripping the last yellow labels off jars one by one. Each peel felt like reclaiming a breath. Downstairs, Ethan and Maddie whispered and argued behind closed doors. Laughter was gone. The air was heavy with something darker. Panic. On Monday morning, Ruth packed her nurse's lunch, slipped on her shoes, and left early. She didn't want to see their faces. At the hospital, her co-worker Patty slid a coffee toward her. "You look like you finally slept," she said. Ruth smiled faintly. "I didn't sleep. I decided." That night when she returned home, Maddie's car was gone. The living room was half empty, clothes piled in corners, drawers yanked open, a perfume of haste. She climbed the stairs cautiously and found Ethan sitting on the edge of his bed, head in hands, eyes swollen. "She left," he said flatly. Ruth leaned against the doorframe. "I figured. She said she's done, said she's not wasting her 20s in a courtroom." His laugh was hollow. "Guess that's love, huh?" "Love doesn't run when the bank closes," Ruth murmured. He looked up at her. His face, once so certain, was cracked open. "Mom, I screwed up." "Yes," she said simply. He blinked, as if expecting softness. "I was trying to impress her. The money, the business, the stupid labels. Everything was to make her see me as enough. And instead, you lost everything real," Ruth said quietly, "including yourself." He rubbed his face. "Can you please just give me a week? 1 week to find a job and a room. Then I'll go. No alcohol, no excuses." Her instinct screamed to say no, to protect herself from more promises. But the voice of the mother she'd been all her life whispered otherwise. "1 week," she said finally. "You follow my rules. You pay rent, $50, and you find a therapist." He blinked. "Therapy?" "Yes. You've been bleeding on everyone who didn't cut you. It's time to stop." He nodded. "Okay." The next morning, the house stirred differently. Ethan woke early, shaved, ironed a shirt. Ruth watched through the window as he walked to the bus stop with a folder of resumes. She didn't call out, didn't wave. For the first time in years, she let him leave without checking if he had his inhaler, his lunch, or his confidence. By Wednesday, he landed a part-time job at a hardware store. That night, he came home carrying a small rotisserie chicken and a grin that looked foreign on his face. "Dinner's on me," he said. They ate together at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd served him soup as a feverish boy. The air between them was lighter but fragile, like a bridge newly built. Thursday morning, a thick envelope slid across the table. Inside was cash, $300. "For rent and the first debt payment," Ethan said. "I made a plan. It'll take 18 years, but I'll pay every cent of that loan back. With interest. Ruth laughed through tears. You'll be 50. Then I'll be 50 and free. She hugged him, really hugged him. The kind where forgiveness and pride mix until you can't tell them apart. Sunday came too soon. A friend's pickup truck idled outside. Mrs. Gable from next door watched from her porch, arms crossed. Good for him, she called. About time he stood on his own feet. Ethan loaded his boxes, his disassembled bed, his old guitar. When he turned back to the house, his eyes glistened. You know, I took my first steps here. Ruth smiled. And now you're taking the last ones that matter. He nodded. See you Sunday, Mom. For dinner? Always, she said. As the truck disappeared down the street, Ruth stood barefoot on the porch, the spring wind tangling her hair. For the first time in years, the house was truly hers. And the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peace. 6 months later, the house on Maplewood Lane no longer echoed with slammed doors or whispered contempt. It breathed again. The refrigerator hummed softly in the corner. Only one fridge now, no stickers, no boundaries drawn in ink. Ruth Carter had painted the kitchen a pale yellow, the same shade as the sticky notes that once haunted her, but now it glowed with warmth instead of shame. Every Sunday, Ethan arrived at noon sharp. He'd bring flowers or a bag of groceries, never labeled, and they'd cook together like they used to. He'd chop the onions while she stirred the sauce, a quiet choreography that spoke louder than apologies. Sometimes he'd tell her about his new job at the hardware store, the co-workers who teased him for calling customers "sir," the long hours, the small wins. His eyes were clearer now, his back straighter. Each paycheck came with a small envelope labeled only Mom. Inside were crisp bills, debt payments, one after another, steady as clockwork. Ruth didn't cash them all. Some she kept in a little wooden box beside the old photos, proof that growth was possible, that people could change if they wanted to. One rainy afternoon, as Ruth read on the porch, she saw a car she hadn't seen in months. A black SUV pulled into the driveway. The door opened, and out stepped Maddie, her umbrella trembling under the drizzle. She looked smaller somehow, hair flat, mascara streaked, confidence washed away. Ruth's stomach tightened, but she stayed seated. Mrs. Carter, Maddie began, voice thin. Is Ethan home? No, Ruth said evenly. He doesn't live here anymore. I know. I wanted to talk to him. Tell him I made a mistake. Ruth studied her face. No Sharpie, no smirk. Just a woman who'd built her life on labels and lost herself in the process. He's doing fine, Ruth said gently. Better than fine. Maddie swallowed hard. Could you tell him I came by? I could, Ruth replied, but I won't. He deserves to move forward without ghosts. Maddie's lips trembled. You hate me. No, Ruth said softly. I just finally learned who deserves a place in my home and who doesn't. Maddie nodded, eyes glistening, then turned and left. Ruth watched until the SUV disappeared into the rain. For a long time she sat still, listening to the storm, feeling no anger, only closure. That Sunday, Ethan arrived with someone new. Mom, he said, smiling nervously. This is Laura. Laura Kim was petite, with dark curls and hands dusted in flour from the bakery down the street. She shook Ruth's hand warmly. It's such an honor to meet you, ma'am. Ethan talks about you all the time. Oh, I hope not all bad, Ruth said, laughing for real this time. They ate pot roast at the kitchen table, the same recipe Maddie once stole but never understood. Laura helped wash the dishes afterward, humming softly while Ethan dried them. The house, once filled with tension, now radiated peace. Ruth found herself glancing at her son, noticing the easy affection in his voice, the quiet pride when he said we. Later that night, after they'd gone, Ruth wandered the hallways. On a shelf in the living room sat the thick binder of evidence, the photos, the receipts, the old legal papers. A yellow sticky note clung to the cover, written in her own handwriting. "Keep only if we forget." She smiled, closed the binder, and slid it behind her cookbooks. Some lessons didn't need to be displayed. They just needed to be remembered. As twilight spread through the kitchen, Ruth stood in front of the refrigerator. Its silver door reflected her faintly, older but unbowed. She reached into the drawer, pulled out a black Sharpie, the same kind Maddie had once used, and uncapped it. For a long moment she hesitated, then wrote one word in the corner of the fridge door: hope. Not her name, but her promise. She stepped back, the hum of the appliance blending with the soft creak of the floorboards beneath her feet. The house was quiet, but not empty. It was alive, honest, earned. True wealth, Ruth realized, wasn't the roof over her head or the title deed tucked in her drawer. It was the peace that comes when you know who you are and what you will no longer allow. She smiled, turned off the kitchen light, and whispered to the darkness, "No more labels.